job creation is up. Mr. Speaker, ambition and confidence in this country is sky high.
We are already delivering. Since we were elected, the Canadian economy has created over 180,000 jobs. The unemployment rate has fallen sharply. Wages have grown faster than inflation every single month, and we are just getting started.
Yes, he is, everybody. Canada's unemployment rate rises to 6-month high as full-time jobs drop.
Well, Mark Carney and the Liberals have been trying to convince Canadians that they've never had it better. Canada was just hit by another economic wrecking ball after losing more than 47,000 full-time jobs last month, pushing unemployment up to 6.9%. Mark Carney would have Canadians believe everything is fine because wages are increasing. But what he is trying to sell as a positive may actually be a warning sign that something much deeper is going wrong in the economy. And if that wasn't enough, CBC actually fact-checked him on it.
Let's take a look. Ladies and gentlemen, this was a CBC article back in November of 2025 when all of the seasonal hiring for Christmas was going on. But their headline read, "Canada gains a surprise 67,000 jobs in October, beating economists' expectations."
Mr. Speaker, the rate of inflation is down. Mr. Speaker, job creation is up. Mr. Speaker, ambition and confidence in this country is sky high. We believe in Canada. We are investing in Canada. Yes. Today is the opportunity for every member of this House.
Canada's unemployment rate plunges with third month of big job gains. Now, again, that is going to be the job report for November. When do they usually hire for the Christmas season?
October, November, sometimes emergency staff in December.
Right. So, but Mark Carney wants to take credit for that. He is welcome to do it because things are about to go very badly for him very quickly.
Our budget realizes this vision by protecting our communities, our country, and our way of life, by building at home to empower Canadians, and by diversifying abroad to create a more prosperous and a more independent Canada. We will unleash over $1 trillion of investment in Canada over the next 5 years. That is worth $3,500 for every Canadian worker, more than twice what the U.S. is taking from us. And we are already delivering. Since we were elected, the Canadian economy has created over 180,000 jobs. The unemployment rate has fallen sharply. Wages have grown faster than inflation every single month, and we are just getting started.
Yes, he is, everybody. Canada's unemployment rate rises to 6-month high as full-time jobs drop.
And that was published today, Friday, May 8th, 2026.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is from StatsCan. As you know, we get all of our sources directly from the government if possible because it's a lot easier to refute Mr. Carney's claims with his own government data. Now, I don't know where the unemployment drop sharply is in this graph, but this graph goes back to all the way in 2018. And you can see that right now, the unemployment rate is at 6.9%. Just so you know, when Justin Trudeau left office, it was 6.7%. And the overall average unemployment rate under Mark Carney, because he wants to take credit for all of this. Okay, you're taking credit for it. I'm giving you credit for it. The overall average unemployment rate for Mark Carney has been almost 25% higher under Mark Carney than it has been under Justin Trudeau. Ladies and gentlemen, the banker, the economist, the economic whiz kid, that's his record.
But Ryan, isn't it the fault of, Trump and the Americans and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, it's everybody else's fault. It's the squirrels' fault. It's all the spiders down in Australia. It's the global market. It's Donald Trump. It's Stephen Harper. It's Brian. It's everybody's fault. It's everybody's fault.
Well, and the thing that I find absolutely ironic is that whenever anything goes wrong in this country, Mark Carney and the Liberals will blame it on external factors. You know, it's a global phenomenon. It's Donald Trump. It's this, it's that. But when things go right, they are first to take credit.
Oh, yeah, it was all us.
Yeah, even if it's not due to anything that they did.
Now let's dig into this report, because we're not just going to show you a graph and end the video there. This is the employment rate, contrary to the unemployment rate, by age group in April 2026. Now, this is not good, folks. So the dotted line that you see is the average from 2017 to 2019. So that's pre-COVID, right? So what you see is the employment rate going down for everybody 15 years and older. That's where that 60.5 is coming from. The youth 15 to 24, they are not having a good time at all. They're at 53.9. And core age, this is the core of your economy and the core of your workforce, it is just above the average in 2017 and 2019. And look at that. People's 55 to 64 years old is up to 64.7.
Which is above the average, which shows us something very important.
And we will get to that a little later. There's a very important reason for that. Youth unemployment rate increases. So this says all you really need to know. The problem with the economy right now is that young people are struggling to find a job. And you can see it says unemployment rate rose by 0.5 percentage points to 14.3% in April. That's shocking, folks. In April, the youth unemployment rate for students was 16%, 2.5 percentage points higher than the corresponding rate for non-adult students. That's a problem. It's a big problem.
Well, students need these introductory jobs in order to start gaining those skills that employers are going to be looking for when they're older.
Right.
When I was, 14, 15, I was working at a grocery store, and a lot of friends that I knew were working in fast food, or they were working at a corner store, or they just had like little jobs to help them earn a little bit of pocket money and also learn those skills like, being on time and customer service and all these different things that employers want in a worker.
And even more than that, they want something to put on their resume. Because if an employer doesn't see you have any experience whatsoever, and you're trying to actually get an entry-level job to a career, you're going to have a lot of difficulty. So let's dig into those numbers a little bit more. So unemployment rate by age group. Contrary to the other graph, this one is going up, and that is a bad thing. So you can see the overall is at 6.9% as the report says. There's that 14.3% for the youth 15 to 24 years old. The core age 25 to 54 years old is at 6.0, and people 55 years and older, the seniors, are at 4.9. So the lowest unemployment rate on this graph is people 55 years and older.
In April, full-time employment fell by 47,000 or 0.3%, while part-time employment edged up 29,000 or 0.8%. The net overall decline in employment over the first 4 months of 2026 was concentrated in full-time work, which fell by 111,000 or 0.6% over the period.
This is a very disturbing trend, folks. We're seeing a flood of full-time jobs being eliminated in Canada. 111,000 full-time jobs.
And that was just in the first 4 months of this year.
And 47,000 last month. Now, some people may say, well, so what? Work is work, full-time wages are there. Here's the issue. Right now, there is a massive correction going on in the economy in that businesses are trying to reduce costs, but they still need to retain their labor force as much as possible. So what are they doing? Well, number one, they're eliminating full-time positions. And many of these same companies are hiring back part-time positions. You may say, well, why would they be doing that? For a very important purpose. Because if you hire somebody part-time, you don't have to pay them benefits. You don't have to give them vacation time.
Well,
So-
you do have to do vacation pay, but it's like 4% of their total paycheck, and it's much less than if you had to pay a person like 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
But the point is they're not going to be taking time off because you're not going to be giving it to them because you're going to be giving them vacation pay in lieu of that.
Right.
So you actually reduce your overall expense by about 20% per employee because that's how much benefits cost. That's what we factor in corporations when we're actually hiring employees. So let's say you're hiring an employee for a round number, $100,000 a year, you're budgeting 120 because that 20% is benefits that you're going to be paying for them. So they're reducing full-time people, hiring part-time people, and reducing their costs of these employees by 20% because Carney is not getting it done with Donald Trump in the United States, and all of the costs keep going up exponentially in Canada. So they're doing everything they can. Now, this has another, well, let's just say collateral effect, and we'll get to that in a minute. So this is probably one of the most important slides in this video, folks. Average hourly wages rise 4.5% year over year. So it talks about the hourly wages among employees in April were up 5.5% compared to April of last year. But where you need to really focus on is actually the last paragraph. And it says the recent acceleration in overall hourly wage growth largely reflected changes in the composition of employment, including a lower proportion of employees with shorter job tenure. Using a method that holds constant the composition of employees by occupation and job tenure, average hourly wages were up by 3.4%, not 4.5%, on a year-over-year basis in April, similar to the rate of growth observed in March. What is that and why is it important? So, we've heard Mark Carney talk about the fact that wages are outpacing inflation. In a strong economy, this would be a great thing.
But it's not a strong economy, is it?
No.
Sadly.
This is a very bad thing. So what's going on? This is what's going on. Remember I said that companies were trying to save money where they could, but also maintain productivity where they could. So when companies go through a period of where they're anticipating harder times, tighter margins, what do? Well, you'll get rid of the poor performers, you'll get rid of, unnecessary management, things like that. That's going to be the first thing that you do. So we're already a year or so into this. That's already happened. Okay. So you'll see some higher paid people out the door. Okay, fine. And then you keep your lower skilled workers because they're cheaper. All right. But the more extended that period is of that hardship, the company then starts to make very different decisions. So what they end up doing is they cut the people that don't have the skills, and they keep the people that keep their company going. And who are the people that keep their company going? The tenured people who end up making more. So if you recall what that paragraph said, it said that it's due to a reduction in low tenured people. So that means is they're firing all the youth and they're laying off all the junior people. So when they look at the average wage in the workforce, it actually goes up because those lower paid people are now no longer being compensated in the workforce.
Well, and then those people who are more tenured, maybe they've been with the company for 20 years, or maybe they have, special training, special degrees, so they're going to get paid more.
Right. And they're already paid more. Like, you don't even have to increase their wage. Right? So if you have 4 employees and 3 of them make $100,000 a year and one of them makes $50,000 a year, and you cut that low employee, your average wage between those people is going to go up to $100,000 a year. Simple math. So when Mark Carney is trying to say that wages are going up in a weak economy, that is a terrible sign. That means we're already through the initial cuts to the economy and these businesses, and we're now into the next round.
So what it means is people who don't have the skills or they don't have the tenure at that company and they're trying to get it are losing that opportunity and they're now unemployed.
Right. So this is a big problem. Now, you don't have to take our word for it, because CBC actually picked up on this as well, and they decide to make a video on it.
Wages in this country are growing at more than twice the rate of inflation, and I'll spell it out for the member opposite. That means Canadians are getting ahead.
You might be thinking that doesn't sound right, because for many Canadians, paychecks have not kept up with the cost of living. So let's check the facts. Starting with inflation, here's what the first 3 months of 2026 looked like. In January, Canada's annual inflation rate was at 2.3%. It dropped to 1.8% in February and rose to 2.4% in March. When Carney said wages are rising at more than double the inflation rate, he was likely referring to that February rate. And for wages, he might be referring to Statistics Canada's Labour Force survey from February. It showed average hourly wages among employees were up 3.9% on a year-over-year basis in February 2026. So based on the February numbers, wage growth of 3.9% was more than double the inflation rate of 1.8%. That backs up the first part of Carney's statement. But in March, average hourly wages were up 4.7%. So that was almost double, not more than double, the 2.4% inflation rate. And when Carney says,
that means Canadians are getting ahead,
there's some context missing there. These are overall numbers. Depending on what income bracket you're in, the story can be very different. We don't yet have income level data from Statistics Canada for 2026, but we do have data from last year. In 2025, wages grew by an average of 3.1% compared to a year earlier. But when looking at the lowest income households, their wages only increased by 2.3%. Statistics Canada confirmed the gap between the richest and poorest grew in 2025, partly because the lowest income households saw their wages rise slower than the overall average. And if we look at the most recent wage growth numbers from March 2026, here's how they break down by age. Wage growth was highest among employees 55 and older, 5.2%. For 25 to 54-year-olds, it was 4.5%. For 15 to 24-year-olds, it was 1.8%. In other words, the younger you are, the slower your wage growth. That youngest age group actually saw their wages rise slower than the 2.4% March inflation rate. The other context needed for Carney's statement is that wages would need to increase a lot more to make up for years of wages rising slower than the price of essentials like groceries and housing.
So I just want to give credit where credit's due. Kudos to CBC for actually talking about wage increases.
Well, and I think the CBC video that we just saw especially highlights that there is a very different Canada for people who are 55 and older and Canadians who are younger than that. And I think this is why you're seeing that split in the polls.
Right. This is why you're seeing the people that are, in the workforce and they are enjoying their high salaries and they're saying, what's the problem? Yeah, things have gone up a little bit, but I'm making lots of money. My mortgage is paid. Everything's paid off. I have a cottage. I have a boat. What's the problem? What are these young people complaining about? Well, they're complaining about A, getting fired. And we're seeing everything kind of fit, right? Because remember what I said. The average wages are going up because a lot of people are being laid off that are now junior people. And they're young people. And we see that in the youth unemployment rate increasing. So this isn't just me making stuff up out of thin air. StatsCan also shows it in that paragraph. They lay it out. The problem is the way they word it, it's very easy to miss. But that's what that means. So when you literally chop off people that are making $30,000, $40,000 a year, that was dragging down that average, it's easy to see that that average wages is going up. Now, the other thing that's been happening over the last 4 or 5 years, especially now, is collective bargaining agreements are getting renegotiated.
Especially in the public service.
Right. So when you're seeing these unions that are negotiating new contracts and negotiating new 5-year wage increases, and they're trying to catch up on inflation, which they never will because it's always a lag, you're going to see that wage increase as well. So there's a lot of different shenanigans that Mark Carney is relying on and cherry-picked data that he's trying to say that everything's great.
Well, and one more topic that I want to touch on is the fact that the average employment rate, so this is the number of people in that age bracket who want jobs and have jobs, so that number is above the average for people 55 and older. And the reason for that is because people are no longer seeking early retirement. And people who perhaps were retired are now back into the workforce.
Now, when everything started to turn, Mark Carney went into damage control mode. Remember this? Carney says Canada's job creation still way ahead of US despite losing 84,000 jobs last month.
Is it really, though?
Well, let's take a look. So this was put out by RBC today. Canada's unemployment rose in April, but details less alarming. So it's just, yeah, they're going to try and tell everybody it's less alarming because they want people to keep investing money. Here's what they said about the United States. U.S. labor market on solid footing despite energy shock concerns. What are they talking about? U.S. added 115,000 jobs in April as economy contends with Iran war impact. Not really going according to your narrative that you want people to see, are they, Carney? Now, I want to take everybody back to this remark that Mark Carney made to Pierre Poilievre in January.
Yesterday, before I had lunch with the Premier of Ontario, I had a long meeting with the Premier of Ontario. I would like to introduce the Leader of the Opposition to the Premier of Ontario so we can learn something about cooperation on housing, cooperation on building the best auto sector in the world.
Best auto sector in the world? Honda to shelve. This is converted, but $15 billion Canada EV plant as demand sputters. This is what broke the other day when everyone lost their mind, when Honda decided that this big shiny new EV plant that Trudeau and Ford collaborated on, which is what Mark Carney was trying to lecture Pierre Poilievre on, decided we're actually not going to build there. No thank you, because there's no more demand for EVs. And by the way, Mr. Prime Minister, you just publicly said that you're allowing 49,000 cheap Chinese EVs to come into the market, and we're not going to be selling our cars at a loss. Thank you very much. So we're out of here. So this is what Mark Carney is contending with the Canada jobs market. We see month over month over month, full-time jobs just leaving this country. We're seeing average wages go up because companies are trying to hold on to their tenured staff because they're the ones that keep their companies profitable, and they're the ones that are trying to keep the companies actually producing. But sooner or later, that's going to be a problem as well. And you're seeing the unemployment hit the manufacturing sector. We're probably going to be in for more as these tariffs continue to have an impact on Canada. And Mark Carney absolutely refuses to talk to Mr. Donald Trump. And it's crazy. It's absolutely nuts because every other country envies the geographical position that we're actually in, right next to the largest economy on the planet. And even publications like the Financial Post are now starting to come out and criticize Mark Carney for his desire to do more business with Europe.
And China.
Well, but the fact that Europe's GDP growth is actually almost half of the United States. So when you're trying to decide on who to do business with and who's going to be reliable, you probably want to pick a geographical location where the economy is actually doing well. There's not a totalitarian that actually employs slave labor, and that we've actually had a great relationship with for 100 years.
100 plus.
If only there was a place that we knew that checked all those boxes.